Hi, everybody. Today on the podcast, I have a wonderful guest. We're talking about sex today. Let me just do a spoiler alert. So, Suzanne Najarian Goodson is a sacred sexuality coach. Suzanne, let's just start there. Like, what is sacred sexuality?
Right? It's such a great question, right? So all of my life, and I think many of the people I work with have told me, like, we always knew there was something more to sex. We just couldn't get to what it was. And so there was a certain point in my life after I'd had kids where I was like, what is the potential of my sexuality beyond childbearing, which is magic in itself? Um, and really tuning into, and there are beautiful spiritual traditions around the world, mostly, right, coming out of China and India that I've studied, that teach us how to connect to our sexuality as a source of energy and fuel to not just thrive, but really create the lives we want. Like, it all comes down to this basic life force energy, and using that for more than just a few minutes of pleasure here or there, all of which is great, but to go beyond that.
Okay. So, how do we go beyond that? And maybe let's start with this. Let's define sexuality because I think that I don't know that it's well defined right now. I know it's being used more so as we're kind of talking about those that are trying to understand gender equality and also LGBTQIA. But like, I think this word sexuality is used quite a bit, but I'm not sure that people necessarily know what it means. I immediately associate with sex or self-pleasure, which, by the
Right.
way, I love that we're not calling masturbation these days, but I just love the word self-pleasure.
Right. It's so great.
How would you define sexuality?
So I agree with you. I'm not talking about sexual identity, sexual preference. Those are all fantastic, important conversations. The one I'm having with people is how to connect to turn on, pleasure, aliveness. Yes, we do feel a lot of that, right, in our genitals, but right, what is the pleasure that comes from, or even the energy, not always even experienced as pleasure, that comes from our genitals,
Mm.
right? As women, like, what's going on down there, right? All the years I've done of personal development work, spiritual work, people still are like, down there is sort of this place we want to split off from, right? My some of the people I've worked with long time still call it down there, right? So we were talking earlier about, like, what does it mean to connect to your pussy, to your genitals, to the aliveness that comes from there, and feel that and live from there, rather than trying to either have it be a small part of our lives that happens in the bedroom or something we disconnect from, and even in the bedroom maybe we can't fully connect.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I started to write the word Catholic guilt down as we started talking. I had a client the other day have sex with somebody that she's dating and in a committed relationship with, and she said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for the Catholic guilt to set in." And I think that you bring up a really good point, is that as women, we often don't look at ourselves or pleasure ourselves as because there's always guilt or shame associated with it. Even being able to call it, whatever, pussy, vagina, vulva, whatever the words are that we want to use. How do we reconnect back with our sexuality? Because, as you know, on this podcast, we talk a lot about love addiction and sex addiction. And so there's often this negative connotation that, and I know for so many people, that when they take time off from dating or take time off from having sex, one of two things happens: either their sex drive ramps up as it relates to self-pleasure, or the libido just drops, right? And I think as humans, that just happens kind of quite regularly, regardless of compulsion to have sex or whatnot. But how do we reconnect with ourselves and our sexuality in a way that feels healthy, that feels guilt-free, shame-free?
Right. So it really comes down to working with intention, right? So if we think of our sexuality, especially as women, as something that we need to cultivate and care for, just like you would not never work out and expect to stay in shape, that caring for our sexuality means literally just that: spending time in conscious presence with our sexuality. So in most cases, that's a self-pleasure practice that brings in intention's different from a little pleasure, a little tension release or an orgasm, but really working with specifically, like, what do I want? Do I want to bring self-love to myself? How do I touch myself with the intention of love? How can I literally taking a self-pleasure, a masturbation practice, and creating a container where we're setting an intention to let it be something more. And there, everything from just unwinding shame around having a sexuality, having sexual impulses at all, which is so deep for so many people, men, women, the whole spectrum of humanity. But then also everything from that to using meditative practices to take turn on and cycle it through the body to create states of bliss, manifestation work, all kinds of higher states can be achieved because this is life force, right? This is the same sort of creative force that's used to make a baby, that's used to magnetize us towards partners. When we unhook, let's say we're taking a break from dating, and we unhook it from, oh, I have to have them, or I really want to connect with somebody, and take that and turn it towards ourselves, it's so magical, and it can create so many of the things we're missing, right? If we're looking for a relationship and we're going out there and we know that, like, I have this turn, I have these desires, and they're sort of reflected out into the world for what I want, then that excitement of a new relationship can be almost irresistible, no matter who the person is sometimes. So we sort of turn that radar dish in, and we create the sort of that, that new relationship feeling inside our own bodies. Then we're not going outside looking for it, and our discernment is way, way,
That
way
makes
better.
sense.
It's incredible.
So in other words, you use the word meditation, which I found to be interesting, and not fantasy, because, with sex and love addiction, also there's fantasy addiction of, like, we're in our heads all the time. I think what you're saying is, and meditation is so different. Meditation is not about overthinking. Meditation is really to settle back in, to quieting our thoughts and settling back into our bodies and being really aware of what we need. So how do we use a form of meditation, and does it have to be this, like, sitting on the ground, kumbaya, fingers touching in a particular way? Like, how do we use meditation to be able to reconnect? And the next question I kind of have, which might go back into this, is, so you said the word consciously doing this, meaning that you're not just masturbating or pleasuring yourself or having sex when the mood strikes, but you're almost, in a way, it sounds like you're consciously, like you would be working out, you consciously do this to strengthen the muscle and to really open and be exploring what it is that you need, whether it's within your body or fantasy or whatever the case may be. Is that
exactly? So
okay?
Imagine taking your spiritual practice and blending it with a self-pleasure practice. So a lot of times people feel like they disconnect a little bit during sex, right? And so I did years of my spiritual practice, some people call it 11th step work, on a cushion in that very specific pose, right? When I found out that it gave me so much, but when I found that really dropping into what's considered in like the Tantra tradition, a more feminine expression of my meditative state, what if I'm just being with my touch and only just feeling my touch and nothing else? Imagine if I can do that with self-pleasure. The next step up would be to do that with a partner, right? To get out of my head when I'm with a partner, to stay more present with myself, allowing me to be more in touch with what's pleasurable and what I desire and express it, right? But to cultivate a self-pleasure practice, to say, once a week, I'm going to set aside an hour, and I'm going to start with a certain kind of massage, or I'm going to do some certain breathing techniques, and I'm going to incorporate that with touch. So I essentially take your meditative practice and I make it a self-pleasure practice. And when people work with me, that's their homework. They'll get a set of practices, and it completely turns both the idea of meditation and masturbation on their head, really. And it makes, frankly, well, people are a lot more motivated to do it when it's going to be something fun and pleasurable. Or we find the blocks, like, am I really self-pleasuring for pleasure, or am I disconnecting? And how can I take the very root of the place that my brain is the most lit up and bring self-connection back rather than disconnection, and cultivate that slowly cultivate profound connection in a turn-on state?
That makes I was gonna say, it's so cool. That makes perfect sense, because I think back to my own experience where before I joined a 12-step program, SLAA, which is focused on sex and love addiction, I was like, oh, I hardly masturbate. I don't do it at all. I mean, it was like not something we ever talked about in our home. It was shamed. It was, you should just go and get busy. So rather than as a child growing up and embracing, like, what is this feeling? Am I crazy for having it? Does everybody do this? Like, it became, let's not talk about it. This is a funny feeling. That's what my mom would call it. And let's just get you out of the house. And I remember my grandmother, and anytime I was caught doing it, they were like, get out, get outside, go play. And it became this, when I feel that way, right, when I'm aroused, is to go get busy. So what do? I just constantly would get busy, and I would never just soak in. So I remember when I first started working with a mentor, she had said, no, like, we're actually going to take it off the table for right now, because as you put these other behaviors down, we're going to connect back in with meditation and journal, and you're going to become more conscious of why you're doing it, what's the impulse behind it. And as I started bringing that practice into my group, Let Love In, I started noticing that women were coming forward and saying, actually, as a matter of fact, I masturbate every night before I go to sleep because it puts me to bed. And it became sort of a compulsion. It's kind of like somebody maybe smoking weed before they go to bed, or eating chocolate or whatever, as opposed to what you're saying is, let's do the work specifically with you and ground in and say, what would feel good to you? Why do you desire this? What do you need? And how can you tap in? This is really powerful. And
Yeah.
you said something that made me jump out of my chair and almost interrupt you, which is, you said you're taking the spirituality practice that you have, and you're now introducing like a sexual spirituality to it. And immediately my mind went again to this word, Catholic guilt, which, by the way, you guys, you can insert any religious guilt in there.
Right.
I've never even thought about introducing God into the bedroom until 2015, when I started doing this work. And like you said, I think many of us are not present when we're having sex with ourselves or with other people. So can you walk us through maybe a mini meditation on what that might look like, or even a just deep breathing exercise?
Sure, absolutely. So you want to do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we'll just frame this by saying we're not going to be touching ourselves. Just online.
Hands are up.
Hands up. Just so that everyone sort of has a good container for what we'll do. But we'll tune into and touch into our sexuality. So I'll whether if we have I assume we have mostly women watching, but if we have some men watching, I'm going to just ask you to breathe, and we'll just breathe into our bodies a little bit, and I'll mix up the terminology so that whoever's listening can get something out of it.
Sure.
So
yeah, we have mostly women in this group. I think there's one guy.
Great. So then I'll use women's terminology. So I would say one of the primary practices, and if you're at home, you can it'd be great to do this out loud. Just begin to deepen your breath and breathe all the way down to your pelvic floor. And just become aware of whatever sensations are in your body. Inviting whatever is present, comfortable, uncomfortable, numb, turn on, whatever is there. Places of tightness in the body, just beginning to welcome information from the body. And if it feels comfortable, breathing in and out through the mouth and relaxing the jaw. And then to begin to breathe in and out through the pelvic floor, almost as though your pussy, your vagina had a mouth and you could breathe in and out through there. And you can then name out loud, if you want, Katie and I will leave the silence for you to do it for yourself. But if you're at home, just beginning to name any sensations in the body or in your genitals. It would sound a little bit like this. Maybe I feel warmth in my outer lips. Maybe I feel tingling near where I imagine is my right ovary. Maybe I feel numbness. Numbness is a sensation. Anything like contraction, expansion, heat, cool, tingling are the sensations to begin to look for. Just continuing to breathe with your mouth open and your jaw relaxed if that feels right to you. And if you start to feel the sensations increasing or emotions starting to come up, greeting them with as much welcoming as you sincerely can. Just acknowledging their presence, not trying to do anything else with them, just noticing them. Continuing to say out loud, even just whispering to yourself what these sensations are. And if other strong sensations arise in other parts of your body, noticing them, acknowledging them, sort of welcoming them to the party. And then returning to your pelvis, your whole pelvic bowl. And then we'll just wrap up by offering, if you have any sincere gratitude for the information, the wealth of information that your body is able to offer you, even if it's numbness, even if it's awareness of how difficult it is to drop into the sensations of our body. Offering your system a little, any sincere gratitude you actually honestly have. And then bringing a smile to your face, and it can be just a big, goofy, exaggerated smile. Turning that smile in and just smiling inward to yourself, starting at your toes and just smiling to your toes. You can fake it at first, just make a fake smile if you need to. Smiling to your legs, your hips, your whole pelvic bowl, your vulva, your womb, your cervix, tissues of your vagina, your belly, your chest, your arms, your breasts, your neck, and your head. And then one last smile to your whole system with a deep breath. And when you're ready, you can come back.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. It's a perfect example of where we would start with practices and go from there.
And your examples of the feelings that you feel are right on. And I love that you said, for many of us, myself included, is noticing if it was hard to connect. I wanted to rush, I wanted to get busy. So that was really powerful to be able to acknowledge that, because I think that that comes up for me quite a bit. Like I'm always like, my go-to is always to just distract.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one last question. Well, maybe two. The first is there anything on your heart that you just feel that people need to hear as it relates to connecting to their sexuality? And then the second is, how can people work with you if they feel called to do this work?
I think the most important thing I want all women to know, everyone to know, is that you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you, that whatever you're feeling or not feeling is totally okay, that no one doesn't have a sexuality or has an inherently broken sexuality or is inherently fucked up, right?
Yeah.
That there is a sacredness in there and that we can reclaim it, and that the amount of aliveness and joy it can offer you, regardless of your relationship status, is the potential is boundless. I just want everyone to know that. We didn't really get into it, but I have, like all of us, I have my own story of sort of coming through disconnection to reconnection. And I just thought there's just no hope for me. And now I talk about sex all day, right? And have this profound connection to myself that radiates into all my relationships. So I just want people to know it's possible. Nobody is broken.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think really reassuring too, because I think in a way we all feel disconnected from ourselves, especially right now.
Yeah, it's so hard right now, especially, and all the questions are so heightened.
Yeah.
So you can find me easily. I'm sure you'll have show notes where you can find me. I am on Instagram with all three of my names. SuzanneGoodson.com is my website where it's the easiest to find me. And if you go on there, you'll find, there's a slightly more in-depth version of the meditation we just did. That you can just download for free. So if you want to have that audio for yourself and practice it, and then really, truly, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I do a 30-minute call with anybody that is just to like get your head around what this work is and where it's at for you. And it's a very low pressure setting. So if anyone wants to just email me with questions or hop on a call with me, it's all, you can just do that right through the website. But it's like, it's a passion project for me as much of work. I will talk about this all day long because it's just so important to me that people know. I think the depth of confusion and hopelessness and despair and frustration we can feel is boundless. And we have, for the most part, not that many good places to talk about it. So I just want people to know, like, I'm here.
I'm so happy that you're doing this work, and I'm so honored that you came on too. So thank you so much for sharing your gift with us. And everybody, reach out to Suzanne for some sacred sexuality. Or
Exactly.
It's incredible. So thank you again. And you guys, in health and happiness.